Hello, and welcome to another edition of It's Time. I'm OS, striving to bring you the best from the Department of English in the College of Arts and Sciences, the keystone of the Academy here at Florida A&M University. Something comes to mind that I read was from some button inscription, which in effect said, "We cannot change unless we survive, but we will not survive unless we change." With that, again, I'd like to welcome to the set of It's Time today my guests who are about changing and survival, I feel. First of all, from the Center for Human Development here at Florida A&M University is Counselor and Associate Professor Dr. James or Jim Simmons. I'd like to welcome you to the set, Dr. Simmons. Along with him, all the way from the Federal Correctional Institution here in Tallahassee, is Lieutenant Garry Jones. And Lieutenant Jones, welcoming you to It's Time as well.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you both for being here. I know I'm the envy of every woman in Tallahassee with two men, but what can I say? Get over it. Talking about change and survival, Dr. Simmons, if I may begin with you. Just because we are really getting into the holiday season and should be feeling the spirit of things here at the university and within the FAMU Tallahassee community, some persons are perhaps not as happy, not as jovial, not as excited about the whole Yuletide season, if you will, as perhaps they could be. Because unfortunately, they may be suffering from depression. If you were, from that standpoint of counselor within our center here, as well as an associate professor proficient in the area, just first of all, tell our viewing audience what is meant by depression.
Well, if you look at depression from the first level, you might say you might be feeling blue or you might be feeling not in the mood. If you look at it from another level, it causes you to not be able to function and do your daily function. And at this most intense level is that you really drop out from society and you don't do anything, you just withdraw.
Indeed. I can understand that in terms of some students I've had an opportunity to interface with here at the university, that sometimes it's beyond just them being a little blue, but really just don't think they can make it through a semester. And again, have you had an opportunity, and I'm sure you have, to work with students in that regard? And what words of wisdom might you share in general?
Well, one of the things that you have to do when you trying to overcome depression, at some level, you might need, it might be a chemical imbalance. So you might need to get some medical help so that you can get some kind of psychotropic prescription for it. But at another level, you can get the psychological counseling. And a lot of times students they blame themselves for some of the things that happened to them, and they feel guilty about things that happened. And a lot of times students have lost a loved one, or it's a loss, not necessarily a loved one, but a loss that causes students to be depressed. And sometimes on this campus, especially with the FBI, and they bring in what we call the superstars. A lot of times students have been the number one person at their school. But when they come to FAMU, they find out there are a whole lot of people just as smart. So sometimes that causes some students to be depressed because they feel like, I'm not the big frog in the pond. Other people just as smart as I am.
And the pond is even bigger.
Yes.
Indeed.
Yes.
In that regard, Lieutenant Jones, I know you've had some experience, and it's sort of personal to you, I believe, as it relates to your bout with depression and being a survivor, because you were able to identify it and not deny it, and in fact to perhaps expect some change in your life has made you a better person. But I know you're also familiar with some statistics as it relates to teenagers, and particularly those in the African-American community who seem to be becoming more depressed now than before. Would you speak to that?
Well, back in the days, quote-unquote old days, it used to be teenagers from 10 to 19 years old in the white community committed suicide. And since I'm talking about suicide, 70% of the people who suffer from depression have some, 70% of the people who commit suicide have some type of depression. But through my studies in 1980, whites committed suicide 157% more than blacks. teenagers from 10 to 19. But in 1995, that statistic decreased to about 40%. Now in 2001, our black teenagers are committing more suicide than whites.
And what do you think that may be attributed to? Because we were all once on this podium, black teenagers. I mean, suicidal tendencies I really didn't have. I mean, everything was hunky-dory, but still.
You got to look at it like peer pressure. You have people don't want to work anymore. They want things given to them. They're looking at videos and seeing all these luxury things on the video, and they don't have the work ethics anymore. They want everything fast. But as we was growing up, we had to work for what we got, and we had to be more patient to get what we wanted. And I was reading one study that was stating about blacks that commit suicide, poor educational background, socioeconomics, where they stay in the community. And one study I looked at was, which really surprised me, it said like, you're in the low class, now you're going to move up into the middle class, and they were stating that, the children was not able to handle that. The adjustment wasn't working, and I really couldn't understand that. And then I got to thinking, when I was a kid growing up, I was raised in public housing. And when my grandmother raised me, decided to move into a house, that affected me. Even though we was staying in the project, going up to get by the house and trying to better ourselves, I felt very depressed because I didn't want to leave my neighborhood. I didn't want to leave my friends. And a lot of people don't realize that has an effect on you. And kids today, they just want everything right. They want everything given to them.
About the same again, you could also speak to that as relates to association, assimilation, accommodation, and those notions of theory as relates to, again, you had already alluded to students coming as superstars to the School of Business and Industry, finding out that, again, they are among other frogs in the pond. But the adjustment that does go on here on campus from a student's first time in college, freshman year, to the point of graduation, evidently retention rates, attrition rates, all of that linked into that. How do you feel in the Center for Human Development that may be being addressed, again, in terms of keeping our students here, and not only keeping them here successfully in academic pursuits, but their mental wellness? How much of an emphasis do you feel is placed on that, or should be placed in that arena?
Well, we try to have different seminars that will help students address any issue that they might have. We have seminars that deal with boy and girl relationship. We have seminars to deal with age. We have seminars to deal with how to get along with your roommate. We have seminars to help you with study habits, to help you pass tests, prepare for passing tests. We also have seminars that will help you deal with stress, and stress is a major cause of depression. So we have these seminars given at different places, and we even take them into the classroom, because we have some professors who ask us to do seminars with their classes. So we address these issues and make them aware that stress will, if it's not taken care of, can lead to depression.
Indeed. You would kill a person. Lieutenant Jones, stress, I know you have none in your life, but I mean, if you were to have some in terms of your being a lieutenant at a federal correctional institution, working with not only your peers, but with the inmates, would you speak to that in terms of how you handle that stress factor?
Working on the job that I work at, it's always going to be stress, because you got to always stay on your P's and Q's. You have to know policy. You have to know when someone is trying to get over. But at the same time, you don't want to offend anyone that's basically being nice. And let me give you an example that an inmate can come to me and, hello, how you doing, Lieutenant John? Do you need for me to do this? And either I can accept it as being an act of kindness, or either I can accept it in the back of my mind and say, I wonder what does this inmate really want. Looking at the big picture. But since you mentioned stress is not, that's the number one cause of depression. But you got tension. A lot of people don't realize the nutritional factor, poor eating habits. If you don't eat, well, we grew up eating a lot of fried food. And to piggyback on what he said earlier, the chemical imbalance in the brain with the serotonin. If you have like I said on the last show, if you don't have enough serotonin in the brain, then you become blue and become depressed. And he also mentioned like people that come, the students that come to college and quote unquote used to be the stuff at your school, but now you're amongst a lot of other teachers.
Competition's a little stiffer.
Right. And also he mentioned something about a tragedy, a traumatic event, a chronic illness. All these things cause depression, tension. But the main thing I'm beginning to find out, and I'm learning now, that, you have to eat right. If you don't eat right, if you continue to eat a lot of junk food that's not healthy for you, right, it's these little bitty things that cause depression that a lot of people don't know anything about. Having negative thoughts all the time. So you go around, you swing around with people that negative all the time, complaining all the time. It affects you.
But then someone might be around and say, well, you think you better than me. You want to disassociate yourself from me because, again, now that we are here at the university or in the workplace or what have you, and now you can't be with me. We grew up together. So then how do you draw that line? Because, again, that could sometimes add to levels of stress or tension. Dr. Simmons, you experience persons like that who decide that they do need to disassociate themselves maybe with previous colleagues. What's the best direction, or how do you proceed in that path?
Well, it's like you have to make decisions. Everybody has to make decisions. What I think a lot of times we don't realize how many decisions we make in the run of a day. Well, first of all, when you wake up, you have to decide whether you're going to get up. When you get up, you have to decide whether you take a bath, you have to do this, you have to do that. Before you leave the house, you might have made 100 decisions. So it's just looking at, you have to stop. See what happens, I think, a lot of times. We look at, when you have problems, we concentrate on the problem so much that we don't look at a solution. So if you're talking about it, the first step toward solving any problem is first admitting you got a problem. And once you admit you got a problem, then you decide whether you're going to do something about it. So if you got a problem of negative people, and you feel like, okay, I realize every time I talk to that person, I feel I don't feel as well as I did before I started talking. You have to decide whether you want to feel that way or you want to try to feel better.
And that's what we're about here on the Set of Its Time. We're going to come back and talk more about that as it relates to changing, for surviving, for overcoming depression, and being around some positive people, as I am here with Dr. Simmons, and Lieutenant Jones. Please stay with us for more of Its Time.